Two special reports on how the Israel-Gaza war is affecting both Jewish and Muslim communities here in the UK. The events, which started a year ago, have led to a huge rise in hate crime, with hundreds of antisemitic and Islamophobic incidents reported every month. It's seen communities here blamed for events they have nothing to do with or support, which are happening thousands of miles away. It's impacting many of their daily lives and leading them to fear for their safety and that of their families. Well, our correspondents Shihab Khan and Sam Holder have been reporting on the rising hatred on both sides. We'll hear from Shihab about the experience of the Muslim community in just a moment. But first, here's Sam Holder on the impact on Jewish people.
Remembering the worst Jewish loss of life since the Holocaust. For the British Jewish community, first came grief, then came fear. Record levels of antisemitism. UK Jews seen as responsible for Israel's actions in Gaza. Even school children bear the brunt.
I had someone make comments about how he was essentially telling me he was pro-concentration camps in the Holocaust. We were in a work experience setting with people from, different faiths, different cultures. What made me even more, upset or even more annoyed was that no one dealt with it.
Nobody stepped in and said anything?
No one else.
The impact is profound.
I am still extremely proud of my Jewish identity, but I don't feel safe in public, presenting that I am Jewish.
Simon was on public transport. He filmed this man, targeting him for wearing a kippah or skull cap. The man has never been found.
Your religion supports killing Muslims.
Anyone living in the UK should be able to display symbols of their religion, whether it's a cross, whether it's a hijab or a turban or whatever it is, and not feel that they would be discriminated or attacked.
Some feel there's been a lack of solidarity, particularly hateful signs at pro-Palestine marches not being challenged and posters of hostages, including children, being ripped down. These mums all gave birth after October 7th. They question what future their children will inherit. For Joanne, it was important to name her daughter after one of the victims.
It was just quite poignant for me, this terrible, tumultuous thing that was happening whilst I was very pregnant. It keeps it going. They won't be forgotten.
The worst year to be Jewish I've ever had. Yeah, it's been horrendous. I feel like I've always got to have this really nuanced, political, considerate response to anything that ever happens for Jewish people and about Israel. And I'm literally just a mum trying to live my life.
Because that's the reality for British Jews. Whatever their stance on Israel, and there are many, they're held by some as responsible for a conflict thousands of miles away. The question for these mums, will their children face the same?
These scenes have been a regular occurrence. Large protests on our streets calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. They've continued all year through to this weekend. And the Kossar family have attended several since the conflict began and plan to continue.
I just feel like I'm in constant mourning, and every day I wake up just filled with despair. So attending these protests is just a way of trying to do, no matter how small, just something vaguely positive.
As a family, it's very important for us to engage in activism to make our voice heard.
And their children say it's a cause they'll continue to fight for.
We're advocating for the Palestinian citizens who don't have a voice. I know there are other 11-year-old kids like me, and I can't imagine what they must be going through.
But this issue has polarised our country, and some have suffered as a result. After October 7th, there was a spike in anti-Muslim hate crimes.
You are a cancer on our country.
Ruby was on the receiving end of abuse while walking home from a protest, and it's made her feel worried about life in the UK.
We are always in a constant state of danger. It's sadly becoming the norm now, and it's really worrying because this is our home, this is our country.
Safety concerns are mentioned in mosques up and down the country, as is the ongoing conflict.
It has been one of the most difficult periods.
Adam Shakil is an imam in Birmingham and says some at his mosque have struggled seeing the severity of the conflict.
It comes up consistently on a weekly basis. We'll have to mention it. The images is totally horrific, and we don't want to be in a position where we seem like we're turning a blind eye.
And some in Birmingham told us why this issue means so much to them and the impact it has had.
On a personal level, it's difficult for me to go to sleep, and I have to try and avoid some of the, more harsher videos.
It is quite hard because we're living our luxurious lives here in the city of Birmingham, halfway across the world. People that look like me going through hell.
With so many feeling ignored, earlier this year, some British Muslims took to the ballot box to express their frustrations. 4 independent pro-Gaza MPs won seats at the last election, changing the makeup of our political landscape. A year on, it remains near the top of the minds of many British Muslims, and with no end to the conflict in sight, it's likely to stay there.
Well, both Shihab and Sam have joined us in the studio. And Sam, I'm just going to start with you. As you said in your report, there's been a huge spike in anti-Semitism this year. What are your reflections of what it's like for Jewish people in Britain today?
I think there's a lot of fear. People are changing their day-to-day routines, the way they look, the way they dress, to avoid being identified as Jewish and to avoid being targeted as a result. Look, it's important to understand that lots of Jewish people in the UK know people who live in Israel because half the world's Jewish population lives in Israel. But that doesn't mean every Jewish person in the UK supports the Israeli government. There are a whole plethora of different opinions. Just like with the Muslim community, it is not a homogenous being. There are lots of different ideas and stances. And it seems like quite often that is forgotten. And Jewish people are seen almost as a proxy for Israel, and therefore face these repercussions.
And Shihab, what we saw in your report was regarding the last election, where Muslim communities using their vote to show support for Palestinians in Gaza.
Yeah, it's been a difficult year. I think both communities have experienced things slightly differently. There have been some similarities, but when we've been speaking to British Muslims throughout the year, the two big things we've heard quite a lot is that desire for peace, for there to be a ceasefire, for this conflict to come to an end, but also that feeling of helplessness and frustration, that there's a feeling that politicians have simply not pushed hard enough to make sure that their voices are heard. And that's why the general election, we saw 4 independent pro-Gaza MPs win seats. They are now sitting as a parliamentary alliance alongside Jeremy Corbyn, which means there's 5 MPs, and that's as many as Nigel Farage has with his Reformed UK party. It has changed our political landscape. And if you're assessing the impact, well, I would argue that's quite a big one, that people have gone to the ballot box and it's made a big difference.